Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing another video from Grab the Lantern today. Today I wanted to talk about the Katarina webcomic. That's right, if you guys haven't seen it yet, Riot have been uploading an entire, in-canon Katarina webcomic to Webtoons, I believe is the site. I'll have it linked in the description if you guys want to take a look for yourself. But suffice to say, this has been phenomenal. They've been doing this as part of the run-up to the release of Mageseeker, which is the new Silas pixel art game. This is intended to be a tie-in story for that because, as we all know, Riot don't give us lore content unless there is something that is being marketed at us, and that's why the Katarina comic is getting made. But I don't care that they're trying to sell us something. I love the fact that they're doing this in general. Today I wanted to break down why I think the Katarina comic is such a good thing, but I also want to talk about a lot of the lore implications because there's so many things that we've already learned from the webcomic. Now, obviously, it is still in progress. The comic is not completed yet, so there may be more things yet that we will learn of, but suffice to say, I wanted to talk right now about some of the things that Riot have already revealed to us with the Katarina webcomic. Now, first and foremost, I should mention before I continue onwards, this will have spoilers, so if you want to read it for yourself, go read it right now and come back to this video afterwards. But if you are okay with listening to spoilers, I'm going to go ahead and talk through what I think the biggest lore reveals are of the Katarina webcomic. First and foremost, Mageseeker 2 is alive! That is one of the major characters from the old lore. Mageseeker 2 was one of the, big characters that existed, but that we never saw. He never actually existed anywhere in the canon universe other than he's Katarina and Cassiopeia's dad. He disappeared under mysterious circumstances, and it's highly rumored that Swain is the one who did him in. And while we've gotten some small hints at it over time, with things like Swain's taunt line for Katarina after he got his VGU, saying, basically, I didn't kill your dad, Katarina, you should be looking elsewhere. We haven't really gotten any degree of information about him whatsoever. He's just been this dangling plot thread from old lore, similar to Caitlyn's C, but he's existed, but never anything has been done with him. Finally, not only does he show up in the story, but we get to see this guy. He's not even just a referenced character. He shows up physically in the story, and that's really, really cool. And the big thing as well is Marcus shows up and basically tells Katarina, hey, you should probably be wary of Swain because he's sending you on a job specifically so you'll fail it for his own ends. He is intending to betray you. And this is Katarina's whole oh, well, maybe I shouldn't listen to Swain. Maybe I should be opposed to this guy. And it adds, I think, a very interesting dynamic to Katarina's relationship with Swain. To be told by her dad, who rematerialized out of nowhere, hey, you shouldn't trust the guy you're working for, and then to immediately have confirmation that the guy she's working for isn't necessarily trustworthy. It adds a very interesting dynamic to things because what's Marcus's angle here? Why is he telling her this? Is he saying it just as her dad, or is he saying it because he has his own agenda for Katarina, right? What's the play here that he's trying to make? I think it's a very interesting mechanic. It's just nice to see this old referenced character show up, and in a relevant way. I think that Caitlyn's C was done so poorly, just saying, oh yeah, it's this random one-off character who's resolved immediately in a side game, and we're never going to talk about her ever again. That just rubbed me the wrong way, that this plot reveal that we waited so long for was just kind of a throwaway, hey guys, remember C? Yeah, this is C. It doesn't matter. Versus Mageseeker 2 showing up and doing something relevant off the cuff, and potentially now being around for other relevant things later. I think this is a really, really cool aspect. We also learn, and again, spoiler alert for anyone who wants to go read it now because this is probably the biggest reveal of the webcomic, Katarina killed Jarvan III. She's the one who murdered Jarvan IV's dad and is the reason why Jarvan IV is now the king. Now, there were a ton of fan theories floating around for a while that it was the Mageseekers who killed Jarvan III. In the Lux comic, Silas attempts to go kill Jarvan III on his own, only to find that Jarvan III is already dead. He suspects that it was one of his other mage rebellions, right? One of the other mages has already broken out and killed Jarvan III without him knowing about it, and he was a little put off by that. But I always suspected it was the Mageseeker. Me and some other people suspected it was the Mageseekers who, because Jarvan III was intending to pass laws to roll back the amount of mage oppression, realizing that they'd gone too far, and then he mysteriously winds up dead shortly thereafter. My thinking was that if the Mageseekers kill him, in the middle of a mage rebellion no less, that all of a sudden the Mageseekers will be able to point fingers and say, a mage did it, we need more power, and be able to keep themselves in their good graces with the rest of the Demacian government. The fact that Katarina did it, however, is a big deal. First, it means that Noxus is interfering with Demacian politics. Demacia has been sort of isolated from a lot of the other ongoings in the world, as we understand Runeterra right now. It's just sort of been off in its own corner, doing its own thing, and just made rebellion notwithstanding, it hasn't touched any other corner of the world. This now starts tying in Demacia to Noxus, once again, which is a old rivalry from the old lore that's always existed, but doesn't really work in the new canon, but gives there a reason for this conflict to exist. If Noxus is meddling in Demacia's affairs and Demacia finds out, there will be retribution to be had, but mostly I think that this is Noxus attempting to look at Demacia as another invasion target. There's another character that is revealed in the story to be a Noxian agent. This is Jaredin, who actually is in the Lux comics as well. This isn't a character that was made up just for the webcomic. He shows up in the Lux comic, like I said. Jaredin is Katarina's agent. He's on the inside. He was the one who helped Katarina with the job, but then ends up betraying Katarina at the end because the job is supposed to fail. Katarina is supposed to fail and be caught and executed, and he's the one to ensure that that happens. Now, some people have said that he's LeBlanc. I don't think he's LeBlanc. LeBlanc would be staying in Noxus to keep a careful eye on Swain, who's sort of her biggest threat. I don't think she cares necessarily what's going on with Katarina in Demacia that much to try and interfere with that. But suffice to say, Jaredin is a Noxian agent in Demacia. And we've seen this elsewhere before. We've seen characters actually in one of the Piltover stories revealed to be Noxian war masons, who are sort of scouts cum architects, who infiltrate enemy strongholds or enemy regions, integrate with their culture, and basically spend all the years potentially sending information to Noxus for an eventual takeover. Tamara is one such war mason who is infiltrating Piltover but is discovered by Caitlyn and sent back to Noxus, but war masons importantly always operate in pairs, so there is still one in Piltover and Zon. Jaredin is possibly one of these war masons, potentially looking to pave the way for a Noxian invasion of Demacia, which would then allow us to have our Noxus-Demacia sort of crossover rivalry start up again, which we haven't had in the new lore because there hasn't really been a way for Riot to make Runeterra such a cosmopolitan place yet, because something like the Institute of War doesn't exist right now, obviously. One of the other big things that we've seen as well, speaking of things that have only existed in old canon and never knew until just now, Garen and Katarina have finally met each other in a canon story for the first time since the Great Retcon. This is huge. Garen and Katarina are one of those ships that players have had for quite some time that have basically never existed in the new canon once things changed around, because unfortunately there wasn't really a way to do it in a canon fashion. In the old lore, Garen and Katarina had to interact with each other a lot as a matter of course. They were both emissaries from their own nations. They both had to fight with each other or against each other on the fields of justice. They had reasons to interact with each other cordially, and that allowed them to get over there, we try to kill each other every time we see each other, into a begrudging respect, into admiration, into romance, which is sort of the whole Romeo and Juliet angle that people really like. With the Great Retcon, there sort of wasn't a way for that to happen. Garen and Katarina live literally hundreds of miles apart from each other, and outside of maybe having fought on the battlefield once or twice, where was the ability for them to interact with each other in a way that would allow them to have that process to create the sort of Romeo and Juliet romance? We finally have their first meeting ever, canonically, in a canon story, and of course it is them trying to kill each other off the bat, but it happens in such a way that Garen is fighting Katarina because he thinks she's a mage. She's not, which also raises a lot of questions about how she shunpos all over the map in-game, but that's a matter for a different discussion. And Katarina, of course, is impressed by Garen's ability to fight. He's clearly fighting injured. He was injured by Silas in the Lux comics, but he's still able to basically fight her to a standstill, and she's immediately impressed by that. And they sort of both realize we don't really have any reason to fight each other right now. Garen has more important things to do. Katarina doesn't want to fight him. She needs to be getting going, and they kind of are able to part on amicable terms. And I think that's a really cool way of doing it, and I'm just happy that they finally have the groundwork is starting to be laid for the Garen-Katarina romance that we've known is going to be a thing for years, but Riot have never had an ability to actually do for quite some time. I'm just very excited that this is actually happening. Some smaller things that I noticed as well, Talon's face is finally fully revealed in the webcomic. He looks like an anime pretty boy. I don't necessarily fault the writers for doing that. I think Talon looks kind of like a weird monkey in his current incarnation, if you ever looked at his face and his splash art in-game. He looks a lot younger in the comic as well, and Katarina does as well, but this is happening during the events of the Lux comic, so that does raise some questions about where this is happening in the timeline. But suffice it to say, it could just be that Riot are sort of retroactively walking back Talon's design to make him maybe more appealing, I guess we could say, but we'll have to see sort of where that ends up going from here. Either way, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's an interesting fact that we finally get to see Talon and see his interactions with Katarina as well. It's been another popular fan theory for quite some time that Talon and Katarina see each other as brother and sister, even though Talon is adopted at best and basically their dad's co-worker at worst. But we do have confirmation that Katarina and Cassiopeia do legitimately see Talon as a brother. They do actually think that he is like a, you know, someone that they respect as family, and I think that's a really cool detail. Again, it's one of those things that I really, really like about what the comic is doing. The comic so far has not shown us the main character of Mageseeker in the form of Silas. I'm assuming that will happen at some point. I don't think you could say this is a tie-in with Mageseeker and then not show the main character of Mageseeker, but I'm assuming this is coming at a later date, as well as maybe some of the other characters that are in Mageseeker, such as Shyvana, Jarvan IV, and Morgana. Those are other characters who are a part of Mageseeker who have not been revealed to be a part of it quite yet. I would also be curious if Katarina is going to meet any of these other characters. She's already met Lux and Garen, of course, but I think it'll be interesting to see where the comic decides to go and how it decides to show this. I also really like this comic is very canon respectful, shall we say. There are multiple times in the webcomic where it basically says, hey, if you're curious as to when this happened or as to what these characters are going off to do, read the Lux comic. And that is so nice. I think that Riot have had issues for quite some time of having stories told where it's not entirely clear what's canon anymore. It feels like we've seen some of these same stories told different ways multiple times, especially with regards to some of the Piltover and Zaun characters like Jinx and Vi, where it's sort of impossible to know what is canon and what isn't canon anymore. The fact that Riot in this webcomic are like, hey, it's all explained in this thing, go read that if you want the full story, but this integrates with it seamlessly, that is such a huge step forward for Riot to not say we have to rewrite every single story because players may not have read that, so we need to come up with something new. For them to finally commit and say, these events were canon, and we're going to work with them, is such a big deal, and I absolutely love it. But and that's one of the things that I think I like about about these webcomics, is one thing that I think I like about the webcomic format in general. I think it's a really, really cool way for Riot to say, hey, we want to be able to tell canon stories and to do so in such an easily digestible format. I think that the written stories are nice, but they do have the issue of some players are just not going to want to read, right? Some players want to look at the pretty pictures, and this isn't a knock against them. People have different ways of sort of consuming information. I know a lot of people who like audiobooks, for example. I can't stand them, but, you know, different people want to experience stories in different ways, and with League of Legends being so bad as an actual format for telling stories, Riot need to find another way to do it and do it consistently. And I think the webcomic format is a great way of doing this, to be able to tell ongoing stories, canonical stories, in a way that both helps the sort of lore buffs that are down to read everything, but also people who just want to be able to look at the pictures and sort of have a lighter reading experience. I think these are really cool things for them to try and do. So in general, I'm very happy with this format, and I really hope Riot start doing more of these webcomics. I know, again, like I said, this is something that they're doing specifically for Mageseeker, so who's to say we're actually going to get ever more of this unless Riot start coming with another game. But I'm a big fan of this format, and I'm hoping they start doing more of this in the future. You guys will have to let me know what you think of the Katarina comics in the comment section below. Anything that I might have missed from an important lore perspective, or anything in general that you think is that you want to talk about with regards to the Katarina comic. If you like this format, if you want Riot to do other things like this, let me know all that down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video today, go ahead and leave it a like, and if you really enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I'll talk to you all later.